Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. StrangeNet here. So today I'm going to be talking about I recently got ganked on the way into Tama, and I wanted to share the footage, what went wrong and how I could have avoided it. I am a big advocate. I do a great deal of my industry stuff in Tama, from research into reactions, and again I do promote it quite a lot on this channel, but to say, yeah, it doesn't always go quite to plan. So here's the footage in real time, and I will go through and do an actual analysis on this, because basically this gank is entirely my fault. This was 100% avoidable, and yet I find myself in this position, and I put that down to general arrogance. I've done this 100, 200 times and I've been perfectly fine. I am in a deep space transport ship with a cloak, and I'm going to do the micro warp drive cloak trick to get out of this. And as you can see here, unfortunately that doesn't quite work. I get uncloaked and it's game over by this point. As I said, this is 100% avoidable, and the fact that I find myself in this position is, as I said, generally due to arrogance of thinking I can manage, I will be fine, and that results in me losing my ship and my cargo, which at the time was about 2 billion ISK, so quite a painful experience. So mistake number one, and this is the biggie. I have jumped into the system, and this is in slow motion, and you can see I'm hovering over the align button. I click the align button, and initially I was cursing the servers at lag, but on reflection and looking at the video footage, I actually clicked the align button, and basically by the time my ship registers it, I've clicked cloak, but it doesn't activate. It takes another several seconds for me to realize that my ship hasn't cloaked, and you can see here that gives the fighters enough time to get a lock on me, and they are on my location to decloak me. And I don't have enough speed or anything in order to be able to warp off from this situation. So yeah, that was my first mistake. Mistake number two is, you can see I jump in and the server countdown is currently activated. There is less than 60 seconds until the server shuts down. Now obviously I did anticipate the fact that there could be some people in here. I was carrying a relatively large load. It was 1 billion ISK more than I actually initially anticipated. I hadn't really checked my cargo hold, so to say I was carrying more than I expected. I didn't realise that till after this, but yeah, I could have quite easily have just sat here and wait for the server to time out, and I would have been perfectly fine. So again, I had considered that at the time, but thought arrogantly that I could make it, it wouldn't be a problem. And again, I've done this through much bigger gate camps than this, but as we saw in the first mistake, it was the fact that I messed up the cloak warp trick that led to this problem. But again, that was because I was under pressure as well. So yeah, again, my own making there.
Warp drive active. Warp drive active.
Mistake number three is not optimizing my setup. As you can notice in my low slots, I have inertial stabilizers, which make no difference to the warp drive trick and cloak, and if you look there is 7 seconds left until the server shuts down. If I'd have tanked my ship properly, there is a good possibility I would have survived. Maybe not, but for the extra several seconds until the server shut down. But again, not a well optimized ship led me to this position. Number four is looking at that overview, there is a very high probability that I would never have jumped through that gate, and this is the kicker, that I have 3 or 4 scouting halts in Tama, but I could have quite easily just undocked from the station, had a quick look, and would have seen that grid and thought, nah, I don't want any of that, and basically would have waited till after downtime before jumping in, or until the coast was clear. So not using a scout was the single biggest mistake that I made in this entire thing. And again, this was completely and utterly my own fault, but I find myself losing a ship to pure stupidity and again arrogance. That I don't need to scout, I've done this 1,000 times, I'll be fine. And again, this is always the case in EVE. It's always the case that being ill prepared often leads to horrible outcomes. And again, it's a great learning curve. And again, I've done it so many times now where I always scout, I always do this, and again, I still find myself. And to be honest, that's why I love this game. So that's generally how that happened. And again, the 4 points there was, first and foremost, I should have scouted. The fact that I didn't scout, it means that I have no one to blame but myself there. It was entirely avoidable just by undocking a scout, and it would have taken me 10 seconds. The second one was I messed up the micro warp drive cloak trick, and that obviously led to me being ganked, but I shouldn't have been in that situation to start off with. Not necessarily fitting out my ship correctly, and fourthly thinking that I could manage to get away when I could have just let downtime play out. There was more than enough time, the servers would have logged off, and basically I could have then logged back in, but I thought I would be able to make it and didn't want the hassle of having to do it after downtime. So as you can see, it was a culmination of lots of events that led to this, and yeah, they were all pretty much my own fault. This was entirely avoidable, and as I said, this is often the case for when people get ganked. They scratch their heads and look at it, and it's quite easy to blame everybody else. You know, that the server there didn't take properly, that messed up my cloak trick, I would have been fine. If I'd have done this, if I'd have done that, wow, maybe I couldn't wait, maybe I couldn't do this. And again, instead of taking accountability and blame for your own actions, I'm thinking, well, what can I do different? Why did I get ganked? What happened and what could I have done differently? And what will I do differently going forward is the questions that you always need to ask yourself when you lose a ship. Why am I in this position? How did I get here? And what were the events that led up to this? And again, I don't lose very many ships, all in all. So when I do like to reflect on it and look back at it. And even in PvP, I don't often lose ships that much unless it's a big fleet engagement, because I am careful. I do weigh up the risks, but I will get in there. But you often know, and especially for PvP, that if you've done it for any length of time in small gangs and that, you often know before you actually go into an engagement, you generally have an inkling that, yeah, you're probably not going to get out of this one. It doesn't look particularly favourable, but you go in anyway and you take it from there. But yeah, with the industry side of things, that a lot of it is definitely avoidable. And so say this was no exception. So the big question is, do I still use Tama? Absolutely and utterly yes. It's still a great system. But again, a little bit more respect from me is definitely required when jumping into that system. But it does offer a lot of benefits, so it's most certainly worth using. And on that note, I think we'll wrap up there. So thanks for your time, thanks for listening, and I hope to speak to you again soon.